was a baffling case.
Baffling.
To have missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
A huge
Unusual.
deal. Very, very unusual.
Elizabeth was very naive. She would trust anybody and everybody. She was like, why haven't I heard from her and I can't find her?
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help.
You told her, let him go. Tell
Yeah.
him to leave. You've got help coming.
Yeah. And
She wouldn't. But now, a phone call that would change everything. A third woman taken.
There was a female and that she had been held captive.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
No.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window.
And then the line goes silent.
Yep.
What is the address to your emergency? 4th Street, Laundromat. What's the problem? I've been abducted.
It's 6:48 a.m. in September 2016. Emergency dispatchers receive a 911 call from a terrified woman. She's whispering that she's being held at a house near the laundromat and that her captor is asleep at her side.
Is he in the same room with you?
Yes.
Does he have a weapon?
He's got a taser.
Is there any way you can get out of the building?
I don't know without waking him, and I'm scared. His bedroom is closed, and he made it so it would make noise.
And we have officers we're sending.
Officer Kurt Dorsey rushes to the scene, leaving his siren off so that it does not alert the abductor.
So, what were you doing when the call came in?
We responded from the police station. We were trying to be stealthy. We were told that the suspect was sleeping, so we wanted to approach and not make a bunch of noise.
You weren't even sure the call was real, right?
I didn't believe it was real at first, just because of the town that we live in. Just not a typical call that we would get in Ashland.
Ashland, Ohio. It's a small city between Columbus and Cleveland, home to more than 50 churches and a large Amish community.
Ashland is a quiet, rural community. There's about 20,000 people who live there. It has a university, a lot of farm field.
So this is Ashland. What can you tell me about the town?
Well, as you can see, it's rolling hills, scenic. A lot of community stuff going on. Football games. The county fair. A lot of farm animals, a lot of competitions and shows for kids to get involved with.
Typical small town where everyone knows everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kim Major has had 23 years of service as a detective in Ashland.
I handled violent crime and I handled sex offenses and child abuse. I'm over 1,000 of those cases.
1,000?
Yeah.
At the time of that terrifying 911 call, the community is already on edge. Just a week before, police discovered that a woman in town had simply vanished.
Well, there was a missing person named Elizabeth Griffith.
Yes. Elizabeth was known in our town. I had had contact with her. I think we all had. A lot of the officers would have an eye on her.
She was kind of a vulnerable person, and we helped her quite a bit as a police division.
She used to call them quite frequently. She would call them about anything and everything. Just like, I heard it's going to snow today. is there any chance that the roads will be closed? She was definitely a character.
Facing mental health challenges, 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith attended meetings at a peer support center called LifeWorks.
Elizabeth was very bubbly and energetic. The first time I met Elizabeth was at LifeWorks, and she was coming down the hallway and I was coming opposite of her. And she was like, "Hey, you're new here." And I was like, "Yeah?" And she was like, "You want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Sure, let's be friends."
She was embraced not just by LifeWorks, but also by her church family.
Elizabeth was a really sweet girl, a simple person. She liked to make people laugh. She liked to sing. She loved to worship. She would raise her hand the highest during worship. Even though she was tone deaf, she'd sing louder than anyone else. She was very much with the heart of a child. It was a little harder for her to grasp some things sometimes.
She was a very loving person and a very loyal person. Certainly financial challenges, certainly medical challenges, mental health challenges.
She lived on her own in her own apartment. She did have a case manager that kind of helped her with daily life struggles. She was always introducing herself to everybody, very outgoing.
The community knew Elizabeth, and she was one of ours, and she was taken care of.
But then Elizabeth's support team realizes no one has seen her in weeks.
We were at LifeWorks and the phone rang, and it was Elizabeth's case manager. And she had asked if we had seen Elizabeth lately. She was like, "I can't find her." So I called her cell phone and it just went straight to voicemail, which was highly unlikely for Elizabeth. I was like, something's not right.
I was concerned because where would she have gone? What could have happened?
She wasn't the type of person that would go missing, so we sort of knew something was wrong there.
This is an area where I would often see Elizabeth Griffith walking, and just days before her disappearance, I stopped and chatted with her right up here.
It was a baffling case.
It was baffling. We didn't know if she had taken off or did she meet somebody online and leave. We didn't know if it was suicide. We didn't know where she was.
Everybody was taking to social media, posting pictures of her. Everyone was looking for her. Everybody was praying for her.
Police began to investigate, speaking to Elizabeth's neighbors and friends and tracing her last known steps.
I began talking with some of the public transit drivers because she would often use public transportation.
Before she disappeared, records showed that Elizabeth had taken the bus to go shopping.
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
There's video of her going through the aisles and then waiting for the bus.
She disappeared shortly thereafter, and she wouldn't be the only one. It turns out there's another missing woman in Ashland.
I said, "All right, Mom, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that was the last we ever heard.
In Ohio are searching for missing woman Elizabeth Griffith, and then they discover there's a second woman in town who also has mysteriously disappeared. 43-year-old Stacy Stanley, a divorced mom, devoted to her sons, Curtis and Corey.
One of my mom's favorite songs was Leonard Skinner's Freebird. It's a pretty good song.
Corey likes simple pleasures, playing music, riding his motorcycle on the highways of Ohio, raising his baby daughter. For him, family is everything, and his bond with his mother, Stacy, has always been particularly tight.
Good boy, you kissed your brother.
How would you describe her?
Very loving and caring, to do anything for anybody, you know, give the shirt off her back if she needed to.
Always there for her kids, calling you consistently. You know, if she didn't pick up, she'd call you like 1,000 times.
My sister was a very outgoing person.
It's a perfect time to make this wish. Have a happy birthday. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Stanley. $5.
Growing up, we were so close in age and we shared the same room and stuff growing up.
Karaoke?
She would sing some songs.
She loved punk rock music and the look, too.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. I actually had a video of her singing it when we were kids. I was videotaping her singing that.
So she was not afraid to get on stage and perform?
No.
Even as adults, you were pretty close.
Yeah, I'd come home from work and she'd have big bunches of food made up, and I was like, oh, wow.
I hear she was a great cook?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get look like this over and over, you know.
She fed you well, huh?
Yes,
sir.
Absolutely.
And Stacy was a new grandmother to Curtis's 3-year-old daughter.
She was a great grandmother. She was spoiled the hell out of her, for sure.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
Stacy lived in Greenwich, Ohio, 30 minutes from Ashland.
Stacy was not from our county. She was from a county that butts up to our county, and she had visited Ashland.
It was September 8th, 2016, when she takes a fateful drive to Ashland to run some errands.
She went to Walmart to get some gardening supplies because she loved doing her gardening, and she also went to get her nails done. And then after that, she was getting some gas and to come back home.
It's around 8:30 at night when Stacy calls her son Corey from this gas station. She's stranded here with a flat tire and needs help.
She was like freaking out, and I said, well, just calm down, we'll find somebody to help you.
Were you worried?
Oh, not necessarily out the rip.
It's just a flat tire, you're thinking?
Just a flat tire, yeah.
They're able to find a family friend to meet Stacy at the gas station, but it turns out a stranger has also shown up to help.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help. I had then told her to tell him to kick rocks. We got somebody to come and help you. And
she wouldn't?
Well, she's like, oh, he's a nice guy, he just stopped to help. And so my mom, the person she was friendly and talked to people. This guy takes over and he changes the tire. She offers him a ride home. And I said, all right, Mom. I said, call me in the morning. She's like, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, all right, love you too, Mom.
But the next day, Corey and Curtis don't receive the usual flurry of calls from their mom.
And then I talked to my aunt, and I'm like, hey, Mom's not picking up. I don't know what's going on. We ended up breaking into her house to get in, and she had 2 little dogs. She loved them little dogs, little chihuahuas.
Her dogs were still in their kennel, so we knew something was going on. The Huron County Sheriffs had put out a bolo, be on the lookout for her vehicle. We went driving the roads
looking for her.
In case she might have had an accident, was down in a ravine or a ditch or anything. We went looking, driving the routes from Ashland back to Greenwich.
Within hours, Stacy's family spreads out across the streets of Ashland, trying to find any trace of her.
We went down to the gas station, the BP, where she was last seen.
I had printed off like almost 2,000 or 3,000 flyers. We were just passing them out and putting them up everywhere. There's probably a good 70 of us, at least, out there handing flyers out.
Detective Brian Evans is on patrol in Ashland when he spots the family.
As I was driving around the city of Ashland, I met up with different groups of her family who was actively searching for Stacy at the time. They were in different groups knocking on doors. They were going down to some abandoned buildings.
Well, I came across the radio that somebody had reported her car on East 9th Street in Ashland. We beat the cops over to the car.
And I opened the door, and I looked, I was like, the seat was all the way back. So my mom was short, so it didn't make sense why the seat was back.
I had grabbed her cigarette container she put her cigarette butts in, and I happened to see a Camel filtered cigarettes in there. And I was like, these aren't my mom's. My mom don't smoke these. At this point, It's alarming because somebody else was in this car.
So now it's not just Elizabeth Griffith who is missing in Ashland.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone. The odds of two women missing at the same time just did not make sense whatsoever.
To have two missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
It's a huge
Unusual?
deal. Very, very unusual for a county this size to have anyone missing, much less two women missing.
The community had concern. The word was starting to spread around.
We were like, what's really going on? It's Ashland. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen in Ashland.
Then a heart-stopping clue in a window at the back of the house. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
Oh.
7-11-22
I'm a 911 dispatcher, Ashland Police Department. I've been a dispatcher for 26 years.
What is your typical day like?
Go to work, sign into all the computers. We usually have 6 to 8 screens depending on what center you're at. Answer calls. You never know when the call will come in or what kind of call it's going to be.
Your most memorable call?
Probably this one.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
September 13th, 2016. 6:48 a.m.
Yep, the end of my shift.
By September 13, 2016, Elizabeth Griffith had not been seen for a month. Stacy Stanley for 5 days.
You're working the dispatch and you get that call.
At first I couldn't hear her. It was real quiet. She was whispering.
What's the problem? I've been exhausted.
He says, I've been abducted.
Yes.
Your reaction?
My reaction was to find out where she was at first, to get her out of there.
20 West 81st Street.
The dispatcher had told us that there was a female and that she had been held captive somewhere near a laundromat. So we immediately start to drive towards the area of the call.
Where's she at now? Where's she sleeping at? In the bedroom.
I asked her more questions, trying to get as much as I could before he woke up.
You have to be calm, but there's an urgency.
Yes.
The woman says she's calling from her abductor's phone.
He had fallen asleep at some point, and she was able to secure this phone.
You couldn't trace the call back then?
Couldn't trace the call. This was a flip phone. It was not coming back to a location.
Do you need an ambulance? Are you bleeding from anywhere? Not anymore. Where were you bleeding from? You don't have to talk if you don't need to, okay?
Why couldn't she get out on her own?
Well, he had taken the doorknobs off, apparently.
As Officer Dorsey heads to the scene, there's a problem. How to find her?
The caller does not know her exact address, but she tells 911 she's being held captive in a house next to this laundromat. The problem for police is that there are 2 very similar houses in this area. There were 2 houses right here?
Yes. 2 identical houses.
And you didn't know which one?
No, they were nearly identical, both the same color, same shape, 2-story. We had no idea which one.
They can't just gang bust into a house. What if he'd have woke up with a weapon and hurt her? So they had to find her quietly. So they were outside looking for her.
So how do you approach the house knowing that the captor is asleep?
So we first started to just look in windows to see if we could see anything. Just check different doors to see if we can pinpoint which house she's in.
As police conduct the search, there's a heart-stopping moment when the caller says she has awakened her abductor.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
You can hear the sheer terror in her voice when he wakes up.
Yep.
And then the line goes silent. It must have seemed like
Yes,
that.
forever.
What's going through your mind?
I'm just praying they find her.
5 agonizing minutes later, she's back.
Yep.
Are you still there? Do you hear any officers outside? Okay, they're in the area.
What was it like to hear her voice again?
It was good. Glad she was still there and not hurt. And he was still sleeping. So that's good.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
It's chilling.
I remember as I was checking the doors, panic starts to set in. I wanted to find her so bad. We're going back and forth between the two houses. The dispatcher had told us at some point that she heard a door.
Okay, I can hear him. Do you hear him?
I remembered that I had pulled on a door hard and it made a noise that I didn't intend. So I ran around the house that we were currently at and looked towards the direction of the other house.
And they told me to come back. She said, hurry, hurry.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window, and I knew at that point she was in there. I would have gone through the wall to get to her.
A hand right on the window. That's pretty eerie. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
We went to the door. It was locked, and I asked the dispatcher to relay to her that she needed to unlock the door.
Can you unlock the door at all?
She's able to unlock it, and we're able to open it.
Hurry up, get out here. Where is he? Still sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
It took 19 long minutes to get her out. What was it like when you finally hear Detective Dorsey?
It's the best sound ever. I was glad because the officers were safe. She was safe.
You smiled a little because you're proud of her?
Yeah, proud of her.
What a relief.
What was it like when you came face to face with the victim?
I'll never forget the way that she looked at us. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. She was fully nude. I don't think I've ever felt so much relief to find her. Divine intervention and a good dispatcher led us to that house and ultimately that door.
So now police need to find out what happened in this house.
Where is he? Still sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
With the terrified 911 caller safely in their custody, police turned their attention to her abductor, a 40-year-old man identified as Sean Great. The dramatic moment when he's apprehended is heard on that open line from the 911 call.
Once we got Mr. Great into custody, he was handcuffed. He ended up in my car. So I began interviewing Mr. Great.
And how do you know her again?
We spend a lot of time lately together. We go eat lunch every day.
The victim, a 36-year-old woman police identify as Jane Doe to protect her privacy, is transported to the Ashland Police Department. Police are desperate for information, no easy task, as the woman was traumatized and still in shock. But Ashland Police have a secret weapon. Enter Detective Kim Major.
Kim is the best interviewer that I've ever seen. She's able to speak with anyone, whether that be small kids or a violent criminal.
I was the only female detective for the majority of my career. Is that good? Is that good?
Major balanced the demands of detective work with the responsibilities of being a mother to 3.
That morning, Detective Kim Major is in the shower getting ready for work, and she misses 2 phone calls from her captain at the Ashland Police Department.
And I called him back, and he said, well, he gruffed at me and said 2 calls and a text. And he said, there's been a kidnapping. We've rescued the woman, and I need you to come in and interview her.
You come to the station, and what happens?
The victim was taken into my office at the end of this hallway, and that's where I spoke with her.
She had been tortured emotionally and physically.
Yes, she had. So I bring her into my office.
The effects of the woman's harrowing ordeal were immediately apparent.
The first thing I noticed is her appearance, of course. I could see that she had been victimized. The second thing I noticed was that I could smell the scent of her perpetrator. It's testosterone.
You could smell him.
I could.
What did you learn about Jane?
I learned that she had met Sean Great. She eats her noon meal at what we call the Croc Center. They provide free meals at noon. Jane Doe would eat there sometimes, and that's where she met Sean Great.
He was tall like my brother, my older brother, and he's kind of goofy, but he struck me as kind. When I would run into him at lunch, and if neither one of us was doing anything, we'd just walk around Ashland.
This is a woman so strong in her Christian faith that no man's phone number is in her phone, not one. No man crosses the threshold of her door.
He let me know that he would be interested in more, but I told him that I wasn't interested in, in beyond friends.
Kim was speaking with Jane Doe, and our captain at the time, Captain Lay, was speaking with Sean Great in the interview room.
David Lay, you are Sean. Sean. Great.
At the same time Jane Doe and Sean Great were being interviewed at the station, Detective Brian Evans was part of a team sent back to search the house where Jane had been held captive.
We went upstairs. The mattress in the bedroom looked like a dirty, used mattress that was just found somewhere and used as a mattress. And then there were some restraints, as in tied clothing, tied to different areas of the mattress to where it looked like that's where Jane Doe was possibly tied up.
So just how did Jane Doe end up a prisoner in this house of horrors? The pair had been out for one of their regular walks and ended up at the house where Sean Great had been staying.
He told her that he had some clothes for her. She also had bagged up some food for him. And she said it was against her better judgment to walk through the door because it's unlike her. But she did.
He just started showing me the clothes, and I remember him asking if I had an extra Bible, because he didn't have one, so I got him one.
So she sat down to read the Bible, and as she's reading, he began to pace. And then he charged towards her, grabbed the Bible from her hands, ripped it from her hands.
Jane Doe tells Detective Major that at that point, Sean Great attacked her.
I tried to push him away and get up. I was just doing everything, trying to kick, punch, but everything I did, he just did it so much harder.
And then what did he do to her?
Sexually assaulted her. Her words were every way imaginable.
He would always bind my wrists, my legs, at times.
The details were horrifying, but the interview takes a sudden turn when Jane Doe mentions the name of Elizabeth Griffith, one of 2 missing women police had been searching for.
She lived in the building next to me. Sweet, but like a child. Sean and I were playing badminton in the front yard, and Elizabeth saw us and came out. I think she just started, talking with us, and I don't know if I introduced her or she introduced herself.
Police discover there's a vital link between Jane Doe, Sean Great, and Elizabeth Griffith. All 3 of them would frequent this community center where they'd get free meals. That connection sets off alarm bells.
Was it possible that this man, unknown to law enforcement in Ashland, Sean Great, was also involved in the disappearance of Elizabeth Griffith?
When I stepped out of my office, my captain said, "Listen, I need you to go in and talk to him about what Jane Doe told you. Can you go in and see if you can nail down the facts regarding that, see if it parallels what he's saying happened?" "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you." The last thing he said before I walked in was, "And while you're in there, see if he knows anything about the missing girls."
Did you know anything about what you were about to face? What do you do?
Well, I walked down this hallway. I was told to go ahead and interview him, and this is where the interview room is. And when I came in, he was seated right here.
Oh, he's right here.
Yeah. "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you."
Before you came in here, did you have any idea what you were in for?
No, I had no idea.
You had your own recorder?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I took the recorder and just dropped it down my top.
Because you wanted a record of this?
Yes, just a backup in case something happened, and in this case, it proved valuable.
Valuable indeed, because the video system stopped recording shortly after Detective Major began interviewing Great. That means her backup was the only recording of the interview while the system was down.
So we're gonna get these cuffs off you.
You decided to take off his handcuffs.
Yeah.
Why?
I need to drop all of those things that would inhibit somebody's ability to relax or feel comfortable.
But out of his handcuffs, he could attack you.
He could.
You weren't thinking about that?
At that time, no.
In a city where law enforcement routinely interacts with the community, Sean Great was not known to police.
I had never heard his name. I had never had any tips about him. We didn't know him.
Sean Great had grown up in Marion, Ohio. That's about an hour from Ashland. He was a good-looking kid, charming.
With Sean Great, people talk about his eyes, they're piercing blue eyes. And women will talk about that. That's how they recall him, or his eyes.
He just had one of these very likable personalities, very soft, laid back, very unassuming type of personality. And it was just one of those things that you just almost couldn't hardly not like.
Sean never told me much at all about his background. I knew he had either a sister and a brother. I had never met his dad. He told me his mom abandoned him. He absolutely hated his mother.
Christina Hildreth dated Sean Great for 5 years.
I think before we moved in together, he had worked at, it was a motel, Super 8 or something in Marion, and he might have worked there a couple of weeks. That was about it. Other than that, I've never known him to have a job.
While unknown to police in Ashland, Sean Great had become a familiar face at the Croc Center.
He would just come to our hot meal and just kind of integrated himself into the community meal and the community that attended and started making friends. I'd see him around town, walking and talking with people, and he just really kind of absorbed what we had.
What did he say about Jane?
At first, he tried to present it as if she wanted him, like they were in a relationship, that she wanted the sexual piece of this.
That was one of the reasons why she said she wanted to marry me, because she was horny that day.
Eventually, as we peel that away, you realize she didn't want this.
Just as empathy had helped in speaking to Jane Doe, Major was using a similar approach, hoping to gain Great's trust. And slowly, he begins to open up, sharing details about his childhood.
May have started when my mom left me when I was a child. I come home from school and she's gone, but I don't blame her. I used to, but...
Why did she leave?
She had to go find herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Does he admit that something happened with Jane Doe?
Eventually, he begins to talk about what happened and admits in layers He admits that he had held her there captive, admits that he had tied her up.
I mean, looking at this whole thing, you forced her to have sex. She didn't want to.
I abducted her and I raped her.
And there it was. Detective Major had the confession, but the confession itself only raised more questions.
As he spoke about what he did to Jane Doe and would use the words kill, that he strangled her, you begin to realize this may be way more than Jane Doe. And earlier in my career, I probably would have stopped right at Jane Doe. Now, I realize it's a partial confession.
Detective Major brings the conversation back to Elizabeth Griffith, that missing woman who Jane Doe said also knew Sean Great.
We can't find Elizabeth. We'll find her, but we can't right now. Hey, look at me. Look at me. I need your help.
I can help you.
That goes on for just so long, long enough that he's acting like he has no idea what I'm talking about.
And then suddenly, Sean Great makes a shocking revelation.
I might not be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
How much you say many?
Now, detectives knew Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy Stanley were missing, but now Sean Great seems to be talking about even more women.
I guess I'm ready to try and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you first.
Then things take a bizarre and frightening turn.
I'm thinking, this is not good.
At what point do you realize I might be dealing with a serial killer? You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
The magnitude was becoming clearer to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Are there any other girls in the house right now?
He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night.
He says, "Meet the other me." I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
You don't normally have a killer show you how he did it.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned. I'd get up behind him like this. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, and he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
At one point, he told me it was probably a good thing I had him in custody, because there would be more.
We knew that she was relatively young. She had perfect teeth. We had somebody that had confessed to her murder.
A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great, that he wants to kill you?
No, that desire. I'm feeling it now.
Sean Great has confessed to his assault on Jane Doe. But what about those two missing women in Ashland? It's an urgent race to find out. Is he behind their disappearance? And can they be saved?
And as you continue interrogating Sean Great, time is of the essence.
Time is always of the essence. I feel like I'm against the clock to get him to say something before I say the wrong thing and cause them to stop talking at all.
And you're thinking he might have these two missing women and they could still be alive.
Absolutely. I start pressing him on where Elizabeth Griffith is.
Can you take me to where she is?
I can't.
Why? Sean, look at me. If I take you in my little detective truck, can you take me out?
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
I'm looking for Elizabeth's body. Can you take me to it?
So she's dead?
Then suddenly, Sean Great reveals shocking information that maybe he can bring Detective Major to somebody else.
I might not be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
How much you say many?
What?
I don't don't know. There might not be none.
He says he might not be able to take me to her, meaning Elizabeth, but might take me to someone else, and that there might be so many or there might be none.
So he's playing with you.
Possibly he's wanting to tell me something.
Will you take me there?
I think it took place in Mansfield.
Where she is? Where are you going to take me in Mansfield? Where there's another girl?
Well, there's a girl. But he met it.
What happened? Is she gone?
She's been gone.
Is she in a house? What is she in?
What?
All right, what's her name? Candace? Cunningham?
He tells you there's someone else, and that woman is Candace Cunningham.
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
I did not know Candace. Candace hadn't been reported missing.
As her colleagues watching in the other room start looking for information on Candace Cunningham, Detective Major continues to question Sean for more information. After all, the two missing women in Ashland are still unaccounted for.
As I watched the interview, I could see that Sean was warming up to Kim. He was telling her more. Her methods were working.
What was it about you that he connected with, felt comfortable with?
He told me that I had empathy, that he could see it.
Who else?
Now, where I came from.
Yeah? Is somebody in there?
Yeah.
Who is it? Is it Elizabeth? Where is she in there?
So then Sean admits to you that Elizabeth's body is in the closet in that same house where he was holding Jane Doe.
Right in the same house. When he said that, I didn't know if she was alive or not.
As Kim's interviewing, I called Detective Brian Evans to tell him that Elizabeth was upstairs in a closet. He had been working on a search warrant at the house.
I was surprised by the information because officers had cleared the house. We headed upstairs to see if we could locate Elizabeth. This is an abandoned house that has old wooden steps. You could see bare footprints going upstairs.
One of the guys on scene said, there is no closet upstairs. That detective went directly to a particular room and looked up and realized there was a concealed closet.
There was a bunch of clothing just all over this closet.
There were stuffed animals piled down below.
As we started pulling away the clothes, you could see the fly activity, and there was an electrical tape that was taped up around the sides of the door to help from the smell to come from the door. And once the doors opened, there was another large pile of clothing. You could see the fly activity again all over the clothing.
Elizabeth's body was underneath all this.
Yes, it was.
What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that it was a tragedy, and once the clothes were removed, her body, she was actually kind of face down and hog-tied back.
Chilling.
Yes, it was very sad.
Sean tells Detective Major that the night of Elizabeth's murder all began when he says she called him late at night because she couldn't sleep.
She came over about 11 o'clock when she brought over Yossi, big Yossi. It just happened that the truck just reached up, just choked her.
We just didn't think it was possible. It couldn't have been Elizabeth. It just couldn't have been. And then we found out it was.
And we just sobbed and sobbed because it had come to a conclusion that we were not going to see our friend again.
You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
Yes. As it progressed, the magnitude was becoming clearer to me.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
He's bought into me. He's going to talk to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Rape of Jane Doe, the murder of Elizabeth Griffith, and knowledge of the disappearance of Candace Cunningham. But Stacy Stanley is still missing, and Detective Major has a hunch he knows more about her as well.
As the hours tick by in this very same room,
Yes,
you got more and more out of him.
that's right. It just kept coming out in layers, a little bit more and a little bit more. Are there any other girls in the house right now? Yeah?
One down in the basement.
Down in the basement? What's her name?
Stacy.
He tells me that Stacy Stanley was in the basement of the home under a pile of trash.
Now remember, Stacy was that missing woman whose family had been searching for her after she was seen with a stranger changing her tire at that BP gas station. Sean says he was that stranger, and he tells Detective Major his version of what happened that night.
She came home with me. We kind of hit it off pretty good. And then we didn't. We saw her fast. I just snapped on her.
The mood at the police division was shock. It was just chaotic and pretty unreal.
And then you get another disturbing call. There's another body in the basement.
Yes, if you go down the basement, there's space behind the stairwell. There was multiple bags of trash stacked up, and underneath the trash is where Stacy was. There was actually a picture of just her hand kind of sticking out of the trash, like eerily saying, like, I'm here.
Have you ever seen anything like this in all your years of police work?
No, I've been on other homicides and other tragic cases, but not to this magnitude, no. A lot of our local community was coming to the area, and you could tell the feeling in the air was that the people knew that we found bodies in that house.
What started as a rescue ended with a gruesome discovery that only got worse. Now, families wait to find out if those women are their loved ones.
I got a phone call saying I need to get to Ashland ASAP. I don't want it to be my mom. I mean, nobody wants it to be their mom. I don't get to watch her grow old. My daughter she don't get to watch my daughter grow up.
Honestly, I think that my sister's in that house and they're not going to know anything for a couple hours.
They pulled out a couple pictures. They're like, do you guys recognize that? I said, yeah, that's my mom's picture.
It was very traumatic, having to see that, and that was my mom laying there,
It's bad enough what he did, but for some reason, thinking that he put her under trash. Makes it worse.
It still touches you.
It does. For me, the day that cases don't impact me would be the day that I need to pack it in.
You want it to touch you. Do you want to feel
I want it to touch me. I mean, I don't want to be in an interview and lose control, but these ladies mattered.
But Detective Major had to put aside her emotions. Sean Great had confessed to a third woman named Candace Cunningham.
Candace was a little, tiny, vibrant woman, lived in the next county over, Richland County. Candace had not been reported missing, and Candace had dated Sean Great.
On her Facebook page, Candace posts about Sean Great, including this picture, and later writing, "I am back with Sean and love him." It was just 1 month before her murder. In the interrogation room, Sean describes strangling her in an abandoned house after an alleged altercation.
3 o'clock in the morning, I got hit in the face with a bag of tobacco. I just stabbed.
After I was done interviewing him, which went all day, I had asked him if he would take me to where Candace's body was.
What's going through your mind?
I was hoping that he wouldn't shut down from just having the emotions of going back to that place. So this is the scene where the home was, where Candace Cunningham was living with Sean Great. So there was a home here. He burned it down after he murdered her in the home.
Investigators took video of Sean that day as he led them to where he left Candace's body.
He's agreed to come out and show us where he put the body.
He killed her in a house that was here and then dragged her body toward the ravine.
Prior to burning that down, he carried her body wrapped up in a blanket. He carried her to the ravine.
Yeah, I remember these rocks.
How far down?
Carried her across the creek and up, straight up the hill about between 10 to 15 feet. There's a big shrub.
While you were here, Sean got emotional.
He did. When we rolled up, I actually had to ask him, "Are you okay? You okay?" All right. And he said it was hard. It was hard.
What was it like to finally find this woman and give it some closure?
Like I wanted to go down to the ravine and rescue her, but she's gone. Frustrating that she hadn't been reported missing, that no one even knew at all.
As the investigation continues, Sean performs another show and tell.
I just lost it. And then I just turned her around.
Revealing more deadly secrets.
During the interrogation, you asked Sean to show you his strangulation technique.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned. Woman being held captive. Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Sean Michael Great is being held for kidnapping tonight, and the sheriff's department says he should be charged with murder.
Lord, I told that undertaker, undertaker, please drive slow.
The community response was one of just complete shock. People had no idea that something like this could happen here.
Even though I don't know them, we are thinking about them and praying for them.
All I kept saying was, "Oh my God." And it was just like, this is unreal. No, we're not talking about the same guy.
I was just like, how? I knew he had this anger, but when I first found out, I couldn't comprehend that this was something he had actually done.
Those closest to Great were surprised to learn of his killing spree, despite them having their own chilling experiences with him. His former girlfriend, Christina Hildreth, says Great once spied on her from inside her sofa.
He says, "I've been living in the couch." He said, "When you came in, you were sitting on me. I seen everything you did." He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night. That was terrifying.
And his friend Tim Dennis claims he had a text exchange with Sean that made his blood run cold.
He had, just out of the clear blue, asked me if he could borrow $20. And I told him no. All of a sudden, here's this whole slew of scathing messages. And he told me, "Bed bugs are coming to your house, roaches are coming." And then he makes this statement. He says, "Meet the other me." Honestly, I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
2 days after his arrest, you go interview him again now with Detective Evans?
Yes, I did. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to get off his chest. Anything else you thought about that you haven't talked about? What's that?
It's a cold case. They've already found her. I'm thinking her name's Dana. I told her to forget her name.
He tells me that he had killed a woman in Marion County.
10 years earlier.
10 years earlier.
Dana.
He didn't know her name for sure.
Who was she?
She had come to his mother's house to sell magazines.
Sean says he got upset because the woman didn't deliver the magazines that Sean's mother had ordered.
He said he was in town and just happened to see her, so he said he made up a story that he had money back at his house.
So that's when I fronted her. So you're gonna rip me off like you did my mom? And that's when I choked her out right here.
He said he placed her out by some railroad tracks. Her body had been found years and years ago. She just hadn't been identified.
Detective Major knows authorities will need to figure out who this Dana is, but they press on, probing Sean about key details of his other murders.
Detective Evans and I decided we might try to have him show us how he strangled the victims. So Brian Evans says, would you do this on a doll?
And what did he say?
He said, I'll just do it on you, and kind of grinned. I was like, okay, and then we got up.
So I roll the camera.
Okay, this is Detective Major. We have Detective Evans in the room, Sean Great in the room.
Then he kind of just gets behind Brian and does a hold on him.
Brad just went to grab her.
I look at Brian's eyes and I'm thinking, this is not good.
So I'm you, and you're Sean. So what did he do?
So he just came up behind. He said I'd get up behind him like this, and then he comes back. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
And at that point, I kind of mouthed over to Detective Major that I'm not doing that again.
You could have lost consciousness in seconds. He could have killed you.
I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It just went to getting the evidence, and I feel I have some training that I don't believe he would have killed me.
Police don't normally get this kind of demonstrative evidence. You don't normally have a killer not only confess to a crime, but then actually show you how he did it.
How'd you know to stop? She went like this.
This morning, suspect Sean Great held on a $1 million bond and facing double murder and kidnapping charges.
Do you understand the nature of the 3 offenses charged in the complaint, Mr. Great?
Yes, Your Honor.
He seemed kind of unalarming. I could understand why maybe women were trusting of him or went with him willingly, because he didn't look like a monster.
Law enforcement is on the hunt to figure out just who is this unidentified woman Sean Great has confessed to killing 10 years prior in neighboring Marion County.
Nobody knew who she was. It was a great mystery.
Investigators reached out to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
My name is Samantha Molnar. My position at Ohio BCI is a forensic artist. I can do a clay facial reconstruction from the skeletal remains. We can actually 3D print an exact replica of the skull. I basically start doing the clay reconstruction from there, building the muscle structure on the face, placing the average tissue depth markers, and then kind of finishing the sculpture. We did receive some tips, but none of those tips led to an identity.
Detective Kim Major isn't just trying to crack the Sean Great case. She also has to juggle the full-time job of being a mom to 3 active kids.
All right, hook her up.
I'm always worried about her, no matter where she is. I would stay up at night, me and my little brother would, and just wait till she gets home.
I try to say that I am not overprotective of my kids, but I'm sure I am.
But could this case put Kim or her family in grave danger?
When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, "I have your daughter." On Friday night, my husband coaches football. I actually took my younger kids to the football game, and I sat there, which was also surreal, seeing all the things around me and the lights.
People are happy.
They're happy, they're cracking the helmets. The band, watching my husband, hearing the whistles.
Friday Night Lights.
It's Friday Night Lights. That's small town America. I brought my kids home, put them to bed.
That's when Detective Major's oldest son, Corbin, who's preparing to enter the police academy, comes into the room.
He's like, "What's going on, Mom?" I said, "Sean Great builds forts all over the place. He's like MacGyver. He stays in these things. But there's one in particular he keeps talking about."
He had a fort in the woods, and she explained to me where it was. And I remember there was a body recovery within quarter to half mile that deemed a drug overdose right on a gas line.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, there was a woman that died of an overdose, and they dumped her body there."
We also just learned a body was found in Ashland County. Police say a gas company worker found the body behind a tree on County Road 1908, just south of Route 30.
And he said, "Hold on a second."
I kind of marked out where she thought his fort exactly was and kind of marked the distance. It was on the same county road. I was like, there's no way this is just a coincidence. This has to be from him. It's just, there's no way it's not.
I said, "Honey, it's an overdose and a dumping." And he said, "That's because of her lifestyle. And people assume it's that." He said, "He did it. You have to go talk to him. You have to do something." The next morning, went in to the jail, pulled Sean Great out. There's a case from out in the county, meaning that we found a girl. And we're trying to see if you'll be honest, if that's something you had something to do with.
Rebecca Lacey.
Yes, sir.
I had problems with her once.
31-year-old Rebecca Lacey's death had been ruled a drug overdose by the Ashland County coroner. But now, Sean Great shares what he says happened to her.
We played a game of pool. I went to the bathroom, right? I had some money in my wallet. And that's the first thing I did was just check my wallet. And it was gone.
He said she had stolen a few dollars from him. And he said he had strangled her. He talks about borrowing a car and taking her body out and dumping her in my county.
This is where Rebecca Lacey's body was found.
Yes, right against this tree right here.
When was she found here?
March of 2015, her body was found, and she had been here for a couple months.
Hard to believe that such a heinous crime could have happened here.
It should be a place of solitude, but instead, it's a place where a woman's body was discarded like she didn't matter.
But Rebecca Lacey's case was public knowledge, and Detective Major needed proof that Sean was actually involved in her death. So she asked him about details from the crime scene.
What did Sean tell you about the placement of that memorial?
During the interview, when I had asked him to tell me some things that nobody would know, he said,
I can tell you the truth, because where I found the cross and stuff right now, she wasn't found there. She was found over by the tree.
He said you put the memorial in the wrong place.
Yes. He was right. Nobody would have known that.
With this new information, authorities reopened the Rebecca Lacey case, ruled her death a homicide, and later charged Sean Great with her murder. Detective Major had formed a unique bond with Sean Great. You spent 33 hours with Sean Great.
Yeah, 8 interviews, 33 hours over the course of over a month.
So much so that they've been compared to Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs.
Starling.
While Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
What kind of toll does it take on you?
It may have made me a little more hypersensitive. When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, "I have your daughter." And I said, "Who is this?" And he won't answer me. And then he hangs up. They contact a guy who made the phone call. It was just a coincidence. The case probably changed how I handled something like that. That was a rough one for me that night.
A month after he's arrested, there's another chilling development. A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great is targeting you, that he wants to kill you.
He said that Sean Great told him he was trying to find my gun on my body, that he thought it would be the ultimate to kill me.
This information did not lead to any additional charges against Great, but future meetings between Detective Major and Sean Great took place at the jail, where no weapons are allowed.
All along, do you think he was plotting to kill you?
I didn't know that initially. I went into a later interview with him. I said, "Are you still having that hunger that you talk about?"
Can I ask you something? Will you be honest? Do you still have thoughts?
About that desire?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the desire probably grew when there wasn't no desire at first, but it might have gotten more. Now I feel like something that I just had to do. I'm feeling it now.
He told you he still had that hunger to kill.
Yes.
Sean Great says he had a hunger to kill. But Jane Doe and the victims' families had a hunger for justice. And now in court, they come face to face with a man they say is
18, and Sean Great goes on trial at this courthouse for crimes against 3 of his victims: Jane Doe, Elizabeth Griffith, and Stacy Stanley.
It was the trial that everybody was waiting for. They wanted to know if this community, if these families were going to get justice.
This is not a whodunit case. This is a he did it case. The defendant subsequently, over the course of multiple interviews, confessed to every element of every crime with which he is charged.
I ask that you consider that Sean freely and voluntarily gave information during several interviews which implicated himself in several serious offenses.
Jane Doe comes face to face with her abductor, bravely taking the stand against Sean Great, detailing her horrifying ordeal.
It was probably the most crucial testimony in the case.
How was he choking?
With both hands around my neck.
Did he let go of your neck?
I think when I stopped struggling and fighting, he asked me if I had enough. And I think I just remained motionless, and so he released his hands.
She testified about the terror that she went through during the time that she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted.
At the trial, they played the audio of your interview.
They did.
With Sean.
Yes. And I entered the interview room to interview Sean Great. You can hear my heart beating at key times during the interview.
Who was that you were talking to on the phone?
It made me realize that maybe it affects me physically more than I recognize.
Prosecutors reveal gruesome details about the deaths of 2 of his alleged victims.
People don't understand when you were in that trial, what you see and what you hear, you can't unsee or unhear ever. And those thoughts are always in your mind. You can't forget it.
It was too gruesome. It hurt you that much?
Yeah.
Even talking about it today.
Why?
Just what she went through. It wasn't fair.
Sorry.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled, find the defendant, Sean M. Great, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Sean Great, guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder as well as rape and kidnapping. But justice is bittersweet.
He devastated so many people, he changed our lives, and he took away not only Elizabeth's innocence, but the innocence of all of us that believed we were safe.
The day of his sentencing, Sean Great addressed the court.
I ask you maybe forgive me, find in your heart someday, I know not today, someday. This mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to listen, hear this, okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys.
He asked us in court to forgive him, not for him, but for us. And obviously, I haven't forgave him for what he did.
Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes, burn in hell.
The victim impact statements were extremely emotional and very powerful. We heard from Stacy Stanley's son and 2 of her brothers.
It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them, it affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young.
The offender was found guilty, and a sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Great.
At the trial, you had justice for Stacy Balloons.
Yeah.
And Stanley Strong. And you released him when he got the death penalty.
Yes, we had. There was quite a few people that showed up out there to show the support for the family, and that we were glad that he got convicted and received the death penalty. I mean, that was what we were hoping for.
Praise God.
In March 2019, Sean Great pleads guilty to the murders of Rebecca Lacey and Candace Cunningham in Richland County. But his first victim remained unidentified.
You are what you eat. So the different things you're exposed to in your environment all show up in your bones. We learned that she likely was from a southern state, somewhere between Texas and Florida.
Then finally, a match.
Now this woman, a victim of serial killer Sean Great, has a face and a...
In June of 2018, the community of Ashland, Ohio gathered at the site of Jane Doe's frantic 911 call.
Today, that house was finally demolished, bringing closure for residents and relatives of the victims.
Many people felt like they needed to be here today.
After we found out that Elizabeth was one of the people in the house, I would have nightmares about it. And I would see her in the window asking for help. I wanted them to tear it down so bad, and I was so happy the day that they did.
You were there when you saw the house on Covert Court destroyed, demolished.
I was.
What did that feel like?
It was a tangible piece that was destroyed, but the weight of the situation is still here.
2007, the remains of a female.
1 year later, another step forward, a new development in the search for the identity of Great's first known victim.
The preliminary results indicated that the victim was very likely Dana Nicole Lowry of Minden, Louisiana.
So genetic genealogy was able to provide us a family and a potential identity of this person. And what we did next was go down and swab the daughter of Dana. We were able to directly compare the DNA from the daughter to the DNA from the remains to be able to confirm that was Dana Lowry.
Sean Great pleaded guilty to Dana Lowry's murder. So now there are 6 known victims, and only one of them survived, Jane Doe. What would you say to that woman if you were able to talk to her today?
How brave she was. She saved so many people. If she hadn't been brave and did what she did, we wouldn't have caught him. Then how many more women would have suffered?
Kim Major has retired from the Ashland Police Department, and she now works as the Safety Services Director at Ashland University. And she's written a book about the Shawn Great case.
I don't want to forget this case. I don't want anyone to forget it. These women could have been anyone.
You titled the book A Hunger to Kill.
Those are his words. He has a hunger to kill.
Do you think there are other victims out there?
I don't think this is a closed book situation. I think more information may come out.
We never get to say our goodbyes.
As for the Stanley family, they're still dealing with the tremendous pain of losing Stacy. You miss her still?
Oh yeah. It's been 8 years. I haven't even opened a box of anything of hers. I just kind of put it behind like it doesn't exist to an extent.
What keeps you going?
I know she would want us to go on. And the boys, it just breaks my heart to see what they go through every day.
You ready, girlfriend?
And you know, like he just had a new baby.
Grandma? You see Grandma?
And he took her out and set her on his mom's bench at the cemetery.
Hello there. Grandma? I talked myself into going out there.
Oh, that was so cute.
She was smiling so big.
It's beautiful.
And that's hard for me to sit and see my daughter never gonna be my mom. Oh, she was a great grandmother to her first granddaughter, and I'm sure she would have loved mine just as much. My mom did not deserve that. Any of the women didn't deserve that.
A beloved mother and friend.
Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth.
She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
Murdered in her home.
Just the sheer brutality. Somebody was out of control.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening.
Sends police on the hunt for a killer.
Possible suspect right away is her husband.
When they find out, uh-oh, there's someone else involved with this person.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever going to find who did this?
But the search for the truth.
This is strange. There are so many twists and turns. What really happened?
Uncovers a culprit.
Something's going on here. They were never even on the suspect radar.
That surprises everyone.
Wow, that was a twist none of us expected.
It was shocking.
No, this isn't right.
I never expected that someone like that could be evil.
Howard County, Maryland, an affluent community nestled between Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
Howard County itself is a very quiet, peaceful suburb.
Howard County is very much a bedroom community. People move here for the schools. That's what it's known for. There's very, very little crime.
But on Sunday, November 15th, 1998, at 7:44 p.m., a concerned resident makes a call to police.
I have a friend who I normally hear from every day, and I haven't heard from her all day, and there's a really funny message on my machine from last night. And I wondered if someone could drive by her house and check it out.
What's the lady's name?
Sarah Roris.
I did not hear from Sarah all day. That is not normal. Something's wrong.
Laura tells police that the 35-year-old single mother lives with her 1-year-old son, but the boy is with his father this weekend. Patrol officers head to the Roris home in the township of Elkridge to investigate.
The police were able to gain access to the house, and upon entering the house, They conducted a sweep, and in the back family room, they found the body of Sarah Rares. It appeared that she'd been stabbed to death.
Even hardened homicide investigators are taken aback when they see Sarah's mutilated body.
The thing that still sticks in my mind is just the sheer brutality. I can close my eyes and see it as vividly today as I did then. The ones most visible were wounds to Sarah's neck and throat, multiple deep cuts and slashes. She was basically just short of being decapitated. She had severe cuts to each wrist. Her hands were just short of being cut completely off. There was a series of stab wounds to her stomach. Tremendous amount of blood on the floor around her, blood spattered up and down the walls. There was blood splattered all over the child's toys. It was complete and utter overkill. Somebody was out of control.
Could the vicious nature of the attack mean this was a crime of passion? Detectives hunt for clues to help piece together this gruesome event.
It was apparent that she had been dead for a period of time before we discovered her. The blood had pretty much dried. I was estimating she probably had been dead for about 24 hours. There had been forced entry to the house. Bloody boot prints leading from the body indicate that the suspect both entered and exited through the window. There appeared to be some degree of ransacking. VCR appeared to be missing. The phone was missing from the wall. A couple drawers in the kitchen had been rifled through, but at the same time, the victim's laptop, computer, purse, and items were relatively untouched on the kitchen table. An initial thought on our part was, could it all be staging in an attempt to throw us off, to make us think it was a robbery or burglary gone bad?
Looking for witnesses, police fan out to speak with Sarah's neighbors on her quiet suburban street.
As brutal and as violent as this attack was, nobody heard anything, not a sound.
Inside the house, the forensic team spends hours gathering evidence.
On the wall above Sarah's body, crime scene technicians were able to recover a couple bloody fingerprints. It indicated that the person was wearing gloves.
Investigators must now solve the mystery of why Sarah Rares would fall prey to such a brutal attack. Detectives start by speaking with Sarah's friend, Laura Billiter, who first called police. They have to reveal the heartbreaking news that her friend is dead.
I didn't want it to be true. I was in denial, and you just can't process information for a while. You're frozen. I kept trying to deny that it was Sarah. No one deserves to die like that.
Sarah Williamson was born on a Florida military base in 1963, the daughter of an Air Force sergeant. Growing up, she was gregarious with a knack for mathematics.
Sarah was not your typical introverted mathematician. She was very sociable.
To describe Sarah, she gave love freely. She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
After graduating college, Sarah moved to Maryland, where she took a job as a statistician at the National Security Agency.
Sarah and I met at work, and she was the best friend you could ever have. Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth. She had friends everywhere at work. She had built up a reputation for herself. She was well respected, and she always was going to school or improving herself in some way.
In 1991, while earning a master's degree, Sarah met Lorenzo Rares, and they began a relationship. The two married in 1994.
Sarah wanted the husband, the children, the house in the country, the white picket fence. She wanted that golden dream.
After 3 years of marriage, Sarah and Lorenzo had a son, Will.
She was a great mom. She doted on Will.
But the new baby put a strain on the marriage.
Her family was down in Alabama, so she was missing that support system. Lorenzo did very little to help her.
Over the next year, friends saw their relationship deteriorate.
Things really took a downturn. The marriage was breaking down. Sarah, during all that, was a complete mess.
In 1998, Sarah and Lorenzo separated. Eager for a fresh start, Sarah filed for divorce.
She was just becoming a strong woman again, proud of the fact that she was able to live on her own and take care of her child on her own. It was wonderful to see.
Now, 5 months later, Sarah's been found butchered in her own living room. The beloved mother's lifeless body left laying in a pool of blood.
She had become such a strong, independent woman, and I was so proud of her. I was devastated.
Laura gives detectives the phone message from her answering machine that prompted Laura to call police in the first place.
I couldn't understand any of it because it was so garbled. The only thing I knew, somebody was in trouble. I did a redial, and I figured out it was from Sarah.
In listening to the recording, you can hear sounds of a struggle, followed by a series of short, sharp screams. It was 30, 40 seconds, basically, of Sarah being murdered. I believe that she was probably in the process of maybe trying to call 911 when she inadvertently hit the preset speed dial for Laura.
The timestamp on the message is 8:46 p.m. on Saturday night, only 36 hours earlier.
The recording gave us a starting point that we know on this date and this time, Sarah Rares was attacked and murdered.
I could hear her last moments. I was shocked, I was horrified. And then I got angry, and I'm like, you gotta go pick up Lorenzo, he's involved in this.
Laura was aware Sarah was involved in a very bitter and heated custody dispute with her estranged husband. She had real fear that it was not going to end well. So I wanted to talk to the husband.
This is not going to be a random act of violence. This is going to be murder.
Coming up, a hunt for the truth.
Something's going on here. We had to look into the possibility of an affair.
Reveals buried secrets.
We opened the door and he threw up all over the parking lot. He knows something.
And a stunning turn in the case.
I was absolutely shocked. It's like out of a movie.
It was such an unexpected.
Hours after discovering the body of 35-year-old Sarah Rares, detectives investigating the murder have a lead. Sarah's friend Laura tells police she suspects Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Rares, might have had something to do with her murder.
We found out that Sarah was involved in an extremely contentious custody divorce situation. Internal police records had indicated that the police had responded there at least once before for disturbance between Sarah and her estranged husband.
After Will was born, the marriage really started breaking down. Lorenzo was very jealous of his child because his child was taking away the attention that he had received from Sarah. Sarah told me that he was not happy with that.
Sarah turned to Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, who lived nearby, for help.
Sarah wanted Amelia involved. She was hoping that Amelia would be a calming influence on Lorenzo. And it would also allow, Sarah to spend a little bit more time with Lorenzo.
Instead of getting better, things got worse.
Sarah confided in me his mother was a little too involved doing all of the caregiving, and Lorenzo wanted nothing to do with the day-to-day tasks that it takes to raise a child. Sarah was very adamant that Lorenzo is his father. He needs to be very involved in taking care of their son.
One morning, I got a phone call. Sarah was hysterical. She and Lorenzo got into an argument. He tried to hit her while she was holding Will. So she had to turn with the baby in her arms, and he had kicked her. She was just distraught. And I'd come pick her up, and we head straight to the courtroom. We put a restraining order in, and Lorenzo is not allowed back into the house. Lorenzo was extremely mad. Sarah was scared for her life. She was deathly afraid that she was going to be murdered.
Lorenzo Raris is approached by the Howard County Police for questioning.
When Lorenzo was first notified that his wife had been murdered, he covered his face with his hands. He fell to his knees. And in the initial officer's minds, he pretended to be crying and weeping into his hands, and that when he stood up, there was no evidence at all that he had been crying. One of the first things I noticed in dealing with Lorenzo was his lack of reaction, his lack of emotion, his lack of caring was significant. I thought he was smug, I thought he was arrogant. I just sensed he wasn't all that upset by what had happened to Sarah.
Detectives start by asking the 33-year-old sales manager if he had any involvement in Sarah's murder.
He denied it, that he'd had anything to do with it. At the same time, I just felt that there was something off. It was just an instinct on my part, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Lorenzo offers up his own theory as to who killed Sarah.
He alluded to the fact that Sarah may have been involved or been having an affair with a previous co-worker, but he said that if anything had happened, it would have probably been a result of this affair.
Lorenzo claims the last time he saw Sarah was on Friday morning when he picked up their son for the weekend.
The alibi that he provided for the Saturday night and weekend in question was that he was at home at the family house with the baby. His brother and his parents, who also lived in the house, were there.
Detectives collect evidence from Lorenzo to search against anything found at the crime scene.
We had a search warrant for his person, which allowed us to collect samples of DNA, hair, photographs, and fingerprints.
With nothing concrete to tie Lorenzo to the murder, detectives have to let him go.
Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, he still has an alibi when he's saying he's at home and he's got all these family witnesses. If in fact he did it, we need to start punching holes in the family alibi.
Investigators head to the Raris family home, 30 minutes away in Parkville.
His car was seized, and other detectives then launched into the search of the Raris family home. We conducted interviews with all the family members, including Lorenzo's mother, Amelia. When asked where she was on that Saturday night, she said that she was working. She was a nurse's aide at a local nursing home, so she was at work during the time frame of the homicide.
Amelia tells detectives that another member of the Raris family was at home that night.
Lorenzo's brother, Mike, lived with the Raris family in Parkville. They all lived in the same house. Mike is the younger brother of Lorenzo, but as far as their personalities, there was a distinct difference between the two. He didn't have the same degree of arrogance or smugness about him that Lorenzo had. He appeared to be somewhat timid.
Mike tells police that Lorenzo was at home when he woke up to go work his night shift job.
It's the family saying he was there. A family alibi, in my opinion, has never been rock solid. It has to be investigated.
But a search of the Raris home fails to yield any new clues.
Nothing of evidentiary value came from the Raris house. Nothing of evidentiary value came from his truck. The only thing we walked away with is we had his initial denials and his initial alibi. From that point on, he lawyered up.
As detectives consider their next move, the public concern about the murder of Sarah Raris grows.
This murder sent shockwaves through the Howard County community. It caused major headlines.
There are a lot of Sarahs in this community, so to have a smart, competent, career-driven woman murdered in this way in her house, it was shocking.
With nothing tying Lorenzo to the murder, Investigators turned their attention to his allegation that Sarah was having an affair. Could that have led to her death?
We had to look into the possibility of an affair. The former boss that Lorenzo claimed she was having an affair with had to be tracked down and interviewed. The relationship between the two of them, we had to look at it. We had to investigate.
Police investigating the savage murder of Sarah Raris are looking into her estranged husband's claim that Sarah had been having an affair with her former boss.
Lorenzo had implied that Sarah was having an affair with a former co-worker or supervisor, a gentleman by the name of Don Lewis. He had since retired from NSA and was living in Massachusetts.
Detectives traveled to Cape Cod to interview Don Lewis. The 51-year-old tells detectives that he is not surprised by Lorenzo's claim of an affair.
Mr. Lewis told us that Lorenzo had emailed accusing him of having an affair with Sarah. He denied it. He said he was a father figure or mentor to Sarah. There was no romantic overtones, and there was no reason for him to kill her, nor did he want anything bad to happen to her.
Don tells detectives he had been shocked to hear news of Sarah's death, and he was at a friend's dinner party hundreds of miles away when it happened.
Mr. Lewis had an alibi for the Saturday night. He was in Massachusetts the night of the murder, and they had a solid alibi.
Detectives reach out to those close to Sarah to learn more about her relationship with her former boss.
Don Lewis was a friend of hers. They did have like a mentor-mentee relationship, but that was all there was to Don Lewis.
It was more like a father-daughter type of relationship. There was never a romance.
The investigation revealed that the affair aspect of it appeared to be pure fabrication on the part of Lorenzo. There was just nothing there.
A week following her death, those closest to Sarah gathered to honor her memory.
The church memorial was packed. There was so much love in that room. Everybody showed up. All of her coworkers and friends from work showed up. The police showed up. Lorenzo didn't show up, nor did any of the rest of the family.
I actually covered her memorial service. Her friends were not shy about casting aspersions on Lorenzo Raris, her husband. That's their suspect number one, their prime suspect.
After Sarah's funeral, investigators speak with the medical examiner about what was found during the autopsy.
The cause of death was no surprise. It was massive blood loss due to the lacerations to her throat. She bled out over 80% of her blood volume. Even the pathologist characterized it as complete overkill.
A forensics report reveals no useful fingerprints from the crime scene. But investigators still hold hope for tests on the bloody glove prints found on the wall behind the body.
The blood was sent out for DNA analysis. That takes a little bit of time to obtain.
While they await test results, detectives revisit their strongest lead, the phone message that captured the final moments of Sarah's life.
Other detectives are listening to the tape, and they thought that at some point in the struggle, they heard Sarah utter the name Mike.
Could Sarah be calling out the name of her killer?
Somebody says, oh, right there, it sounds like Mike. I hear Mike. Lorenzo's brother's name is Mike or Michael.
But what possible motive could Mike Raris have to kill his sister-in-law?
One of the theories that we were kicking around at this point was, could it have been a family member? Because initially all suspicion would have fallen on Lorenzo. And to keep Lorenzo out of it and to maintain the child custody, to have a family member do it, the most logical one would have been Mike. He had to be looked at as a potential suspect.
Detectives sit down with Lorenzo's little brother and play him the answering machine message.
The recording was played for him, and Mike was asked, "Do you hear the name Mike?" And he said no, he did not. Mike denied being personally involved in the murder of Sarah. My overall impressions of Mike was I don't think he had it in him to do something like this, but I had a feeling that there was something playing on him. Again, he was part of Lorenzo's alibi that he was at home at the time of the murder.
Mike sticks to the story he'd previously told police, that when he woke up Saturday evening to go to work, Lorenzo was at home.
Blood was drawn, hairs were pulled. We fingerprinted him, we photographed him. We drove him back to his job. I told him, I said, I think you know what happened. I think you know what is going on. And we opened the door and he threw up all over the parking lot. And I said, whenever you want to come clean on this, you know who to call, and I gave him my card. My partner and I, we both...
Detectives investigating the murder of Sarah Raris suspect that her brother-in-law, Mike Raris, might know more about her murder than he is letting on.
My feeling was something's going on here. Maybe if he didn't do it, he definitely knows about it.
Mike's brother and Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Raris, is still a suspect in Sarah's murder. But both men say they were at home together at the time she was killed.
If there was one avenue to break the Raris family alibi, I just thought the weak link was going to be Mike. Problem was, the lawyer that was representing Lorenzo got involved, and from that point on, we were not allowed to speak with Mike without counsel being present. That threw up a huge wall.
A month following the murder, the police investigation is at a standstill. But there is one person that investigators think might be able to help.
Lorenzo had been married previously. His first wife, Becky, was still living locally. We thought she's somebody that we could enlist.
Detectives meet with Becky Raris to ask for her assistance in the investigation.
Once she heard that Sarah had been murdered, Becky actually agreed to help us. She still had some degree of relationship with Lorenzo. They were cordial to each other. Becky agreed to allow us to record her phone calls with Lorenzo. We were hoping to obtain statements from Lorenzo that would incriminate him in the murder.
Becky reaches out to her ex-husband and tries to steer their conversation to Sarah's murder.
She was phenomenal. She conducted a number of controlled calls on our behalf with him. We were hopefully optimistic that we would get something, but he never said anything incriminating to her on those recordings.
Detectives have hit a dead end in their pursuit of Sarah's killer.
I remember cornering the police chief out of like a public event to ask him, hey, any updates on the case? And he obviously said no. There were no updates to give. They had nothing.
I prayed every day that this would be the day that something, would come forth.
Investigators get new hope when DNA analysis of blood from the glove prints at the crime scene comes back.
The blood came back as a mixture of Sarah's DNA and an unknown male. We were confident that we had the killer's DNA because it's mixed with Sarah's blood. If we found that person, then we could definitely put them at the scene with her actually bleeding.
Could this finally be what detectives need to tie Lorenzo to his wife's murder?
We submitted DNA samples from Lorenzo and his brother Mike for DNA comparison. Came back that neither one were a match. Obviously, that was a bit of a blow. I mean, it's very disappointing. Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, it's not him.
In the beginning, it was pretty clear the police thought that her husband played a role in this. She had a very messy divorce going on, there were custody disputes, but the police didn't arrest him. And so there was a real air of mystery about it because the police couldn't figure it out either.
If Lorenzo was not responsible for the murder of Sarah, who could her killer be? And why was the beloved mother killed in such a violent manner? Investigators are back to square one.
Something has got to give on this. You go back through it again. Did I miss something? You have to look at everything. I did contact the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit in Quantico, and they run it against all other cases in the country looking for similarities. Nothing of value came from that.
Detectives also seek help with deciphering the answering machine message from Laura that captured Sarah's attack.
We sent the recording to the FBI to see if they could clean it up and enhance it to try to determine if in fact it was a name. But well, it turned out it's not Mike. The whole thing with hearing the name Mike, I think, in hindsight, was just pure power of suggestion.
When you have a murder of this sort and no arrest, there was a concern and tension in the community as to what kind of person would do something like this.
We had been hammering away on this thing for almost 7, 8 months. At that point, we're kind of like dead in the water. We felt there was nothing else we could do to advance the case.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever going to find who did this? You started to lose hope.
Just as the case goes cold, an urgent call comes in from a neighboring jurisdiction.
My partner came running down the hall and says, you need to come down and take this call. I have Baltimore County Homicide on the phone. You need to hear this. We got it. We got this case.
The 7-month hunt for the killer of Sarah Raris is at a standstill when detectives investigating the murder receive an unexpected phone call.
Picked up the phone and it was Detective Phil Morrill from Baltimore County. He says, hey, he says, I just got done running a wired conversation with an inmate in the Baltimore County Detention Center, talking about how he committed this murder of a woman. He described how he went through the window and how he attacked her, and how he stabbed her in the belly. And he said, I damn near took her head off. And he says, do you guys have anything like it? And I said, oh yeah, we do. The murder of Sarah Raris. And he said, well, you need to hear this tape.
Howard County investigators get a copy of the jailhouse recording of Ardale Tickles, who had been locked up for an armed robbery 3 months ago.
We sat down and we started listening to the tape of Ardale Tickles. Tickles is describing this homicide that he had committed. Tickles is describing things that only the police and the suspect would know, all the injuries that had been inflicted upon Sarah. None of that had been released. None of that had been made public. I knew now we had it. I mean, I'm confident Ardale Tickles committed this murder.
Tickles keeps talking and has an even bigger revelation.
He's talking about how he came to be employed to do this.
Once I paid, you know what I'm saying, the lady while I was working out, she told me to go hit this lady on. She just gave me the head to do it, and I went to go do it.
It's now a straight-up murder for hire. We had the actual physical killer of Sarah Raris. We needed the person who hired him and paid him to conduct the murder, a co-worker. We had some homework to do.
Who was this mysterious co-worker? What was her relation to Sarah? And why would she want Sarah killed? Investigators start with Ardale Tickles.
He's 19 years old. He's a kid at this point. He was incarcerated awaiting trial. He robbed the McDonald's and he shot the manager during the course of the robbery. When we started digging into him, we couldn't find any kind of criminal record with him prior to this.
Detectives checked Tickle's employment history, looking for any intersection with Sarah's life or those that knew her.
We went back like a year. He was employed in the laundry room at a local nursing home in Baltimore. He did the laundry for this facility.
The entire investigation turns when detectives realize who also worked at the same nursing home.
Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, they were co-workers. That was kind of mind-blowing, you know. She was never even on the suspect radar. Him and Amelia working at the same nursing home, it was the one piece to the puzzle that you needed to put in, and the rest of them just kind of fell into place after that.
Could it really be true that this 63-year-old grandmother hired someone to kill her daughter-in-law? And if it is true, who else knew about it?
We still weren't convinced that Lorenzo was completely blameless in this. So there was still a lot of investigative work to do. The Rares house in Parkville was put under surveillance while we investigated the relationship between Tickles and Amelia. We matched up work schedules. So we were able to establish, yes, they worked together. Yes, they worked the same hours. We were able to locate a few co-workers who remember seeing Amelia talking to this guy. We were able to show that relationship did in fact exist.
But even with a known relationship, police had no evidence Amelia plotted to murder Sarah. To get to the truth, investigators turned to the man they believe killed Sarah.
Tickles was brought in to try to elicit his cooperation. What he gives up, we can use.
Detectives play Tickles the jailhouse recording.
I have the tape recording set to a point where he admits to stabbing her. He heard his voice talk about the murder. As you can see, we don't need your confession. No, we got it.
Can you please enlighten me on what I'm facing and what I'm dealing with in this case?
You're going to be charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. But we need to get some details worked out. The person we want is this woman that hired you. I had a picture of Amelia. I said, is this the woman? And he says, yeah, that's her. We got her. I mean, it was huge. In some respects, it validated what we thought all along, that everything originated in the Rares household, in the Rares family. Never in 100 years would we have thought that she's the one that was calling the shots. What did she say to you?
She was tormented. She couldn't go on with life until this lady was dead. She was like, do me a favor and kill this lady, basically.
So she used the word kill?
Kill, take him off the earth, yeah. And she said, I'll pay you. She said, I'll give you money.
If you hire somebody to commit a murder and that person carries it out, then you're susceptible to the same charges and the same penalties as the person who did the actual killing. So now we're looking at first-degree murder charges for Amelia. After it was over with, did you call this woman that night?
No, I met her at work, like that week.
Okay, is that when she paid you?
Yeah, she had a bundle with like $3,000.
Despite Tickle's revelations, investigators know it will be hard to bring charges against Amelia on the word of a jailed offender.
We had enough. We could have easily arrested Tickles and called it case closed. We needed something that really implicated Amelia in the conspiracy. What we wanted him to do to nail down the first-degree murder charge was get on the phone and call Amelia. We wanted to run a controlled call with him, and he refused. When that didn't happen, we had some work to do.
Investigators now suspect Sarah Raris was murdered in a hit organized by her mother-in-law, Amelia Raris. But the hitman, Ardale Tickles, refuses to take part in a wiretap to implicate her.
I would have loved to have got this controlled phone call to Amelia to further establish Amelia's involvement in the planning of the murder, but we still felt we were on the right track. A big item of evidence in this case obviously would be follow the money. We pulled Amelia's financial records and found out, sure enough, Amelia wrote a check out in the amount Tickles says he got paid, and she wrote it out to cash. That was key. That's the money trail.
Amelia Raris is arrested and interviewed by detectives.
She acknowledged her relationship with Tickles, and she also acknowledged that she hired him, but she alleged that she did not hire him to kill her. He did that on his own, she said. I just wanted to scare her.
There was no intention to kill. I didn't know that it's like that. In fact, I thought he's not going to kill her. He is just going to stone the house. You know, you throw the stone there.
$3,000 to stone the house?
Yes, to stone the house and make her feel sorry as revenge for me.
Amelia told us she wanted Sarah scared because she felt that Sarah, throughout their relationship, had disrespected her, did not acknowledge her as a woman with more maternal experience.
Because of the child?
Because of the child. I am not welcome to help. I think she did not like my style. The mother in my culture is revered and respected. I want to be treated with respect. I'm her mother. My marriage, she disrespected me. That is a slap on my face, and it is even more than death to me.
I understand. You were insulted.
Oh my God. Million words more than that. Showing disrespect to a mother is death.
Is it enough, though, to have someone killed?
Yes, because it will be.
I think she was trying to portray herself as this poor little old lady who was as much a victim as anything. We weren't buying any of it. I mean, it's pure evil. There's no other way to describe, what happened here.
Then, detectives ask Amelia the question they've been trying to answer since day one.
Is Lorenzo involved?
No.
Does he know to this day what happened?
No. I do not want to tell my son. Because if I tell him, he will have problems. He loves the woman very much.
He's still in love with her?
Yeah.
Does Michael know anything about this?
No. We will tell him.
Despite Amelia's claim that she had no intention for Sarah to be killed, police proceed with charges against her.
We were able to establish that she hired him and paid him. That gave us more than enough to further solidify the case we had against her already.
The case against Ardale Tickles is strengthened when tests match his DNA to blood evidence found at the crime scene.
Both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Raris were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and in Amelia's case, she was charged with the crime of solicitation.
When we first heard that it was Amelia, the feeling was, no, this isn't right.
When I found out about her, I'm like, where the heck did Amelia come from?
I was absolutely shocked that the mother-in-law orchestrated the entire thing, and it was a hitman who did it. Wow, that was a twist none of us expected. Like, there's no way. It's like out of a movie.
In January of 2000, both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Raris faced trial for the murder of Sarah Raris.
There was no trial for Ardale Tickles.
He was going to go to trial, and Ardale Tickles unexpectedly decides to plead guilty. He's completely remorseful. He says, I shouldn't have done it. And then he got life in prison from the judge.
Amelia Raris enters a plea of not guilty.
She maintained her innocence that she had just paid this guy $3,000 to go throw stones at the house.
I testified at the trial. I was there to let the jury know who Sarah was. I was afraid they would see this sweet, meek little old lady and not believe that someone like that could be evil and could organize this murder.
Ardale Tickles refuses to testify, but prosecutors present the recording of his police interview describing the plot and the crime, as well as the telephone message that captured Sarah's last moments of life.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening. It was so unspeakably brutal. It was chilling.
After a 7-day trial, Amelia Raris is found guilty of all charges. she is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I was relieved when the guilty verdict was read, and I am glad that they saw through that demeanor that she put on.
He just couldn't believe that he'd lost another son. Just really broke him.
When the villagers found out, they were shocked because it's such a quiet, peaceful village.
It was a pre-planned and well thought out murder.
In April 2003, the Nottingham village of Edwinstowe was shocked by the news that one of its residents had been found dead in the room of a local hotel, with his wrists and his neck elaborately bound. Was this a bondage session gone wrong? Or was it?
In the heart of Sherwood Forest is the Nottinghamshire village of Edwinstowe. Legend has it that the village church was where Robin Hood married Maid Marian, and it still retained all of its charm.
Edwinstowe's a quiet village. It's a very tight-knit community, lots of very friendly people, people willing to talk to you on the street and help you out when you're in need.
On the evening of 25th of April 2003, panicked Edwinstowe resident Carol Croydon contacted her brother-in-law concerned about her missing husband, Philip.
I had a phone call from Carol asking me if Phil was with me. I said, no, he's not with me. Why was there a problem? She said he'd gone missing and she didn't know where he was. I was just a little worried because it just wasn't like Phil to do that, you know, to disappear without saying anything to anyone. I left it for probably 15, 20 minutes and thinking, you know, what could have happened, where could he have gone? So I called Phil on his mobile. It went straight to Anne's phone as though his phone was switched off. After that, I rang Carol and said, look, I've tried to contact Phil. His phone's just gone straight to voicemail and, you know, I don't know where he is. I contacted my sister, I think, then, and told her what was going off, but not to tell my parents because the amount of stress they've suffered in the past with losing 2 other children. So I didn't want to worry them. So we kept it to ourselves that, you know, we couldn't find Phil and no one knew where he was.
Although he hadn't told his parents, Stephen did share his concerns with his sister.
He told me that Phil had gone missing and he'd been missing overnight, but I shouldn't worry about it because he'd spoken to Carol and Carol had said that she thought maybe Phil was suffering from depression.
Initially, Carol's assurances did the job of calming the family down, but it didn't last long, and they reported Philip missing to the police before going to bed.
I had a few hours sleep, and then when I woke in the morning, the first thing I did was to ring Carol to see if he'd turned up at home. He wasn't at home, and then I just rang his mobile again, and it went straight to Aunt's phone again. At that point I decided maybe I should go and look for him because if it fell out, he may have gone somewhere and just parked up for the night and spent the night in his car. I came and parked down here on the Saturday morning about 8:30 because this is the area where myself and my brother used to fish all the time. I went over to the nature reserve area first, which is one of the popular fishing spots where we used to go. Couldn't see anything. Then went down to the church over there, nothing down there. I then drove across the bridge and down towards the river, searching all the lakes, but I couldn't see anything.
By now, Stephen's brother Philip had been missing for over 10 hours.
At that point I was very worried because him not responding to any calls, not letting anyone know where he was, totally out of character for Phil. Normally, you know, he's very family loving and he wouldn't put us through any, especially my mum and dad, it wouldn't put us through that sort of stress. So at that point, I feared there was something worse.
I'd just got flashes of my mum and dad running through my mind, thinking, you know, how they're going to cope, losing another brother, another son.
In the early hours of the 26th of April, a shocking discovery was made 36 miles from Edwinstowe.
We received a phone call from an employee of a hotel that had found a body in the bedroom of the hotel. Officers arrived at the room in question, and it was immediately apparent that there was blood at the scene, and the man himself had got his hands tied. He'd also got a scarf across his eyes, at the back of his head. It's certainly an unusual set of circumstances.
Immediately, police set about organising what they believed to be a crime scene.
Police officers took steps to secure the corridor and the room itself so that no one else was allowed anywhere near it. The senior officer called out for the forensic services and the pathologist to attend the scene. Certainly they spent some considerable time there taking samples for fingerprints, DNA, fibres, that sort of thing. It was apparent from the amount of blood around that it was a suspicious incident. We were able to identify the man, Mr. Philip Croydon, and that was from his driving licence.
Philip's wife Carol and his family were completely unaware that their worst fears had been realised, but it was the police's job to inform them of the news.
When officers told Carol Croydon that her husband had been found dead in a hotel, she was clearly very distressed.
She was hysterical at the time. She was really, really distraught. She couldn't understand what he'd been doing in a hotel room, and she wanted answers.
Unaware their brother had been found dead, Stephen and Sandra were on their way to Carol's in Edwinstowe to make sure she was okay.
I received a call and was on the way up there to say that Phil had been found in a hotel and he was dead.
It was such a shock that I kind of panicked a little bit, but it's happened and we've got to go and face and find out what the story is.
Stephen and Sandra continued their journey to see their sister-in-law.
When we got to the house, Carol was there. She was upset, but probably not as upset as the rest of us.
When we walked in the house, there were I think there were probably 5 or 6 police officers there, because Carol had fed him the information that Phil was depressed. So Steve said, I hope he hasn't committed suicide. Obviously thinking about my mum and dad again. Steve, we need to tell my mum and dad. And so the 2 police liaison officers drove with us up to my mum and dad's house.
First went to the parents' address, to Ted and Marg, and the rest of the family were all at their house. I was with a colleague at the time. There was brother and sister, Steve and Sandra. Employed as a family liaison officer, involved with interaction with the victim's family, to interview them about the victim, the lifestyle, the background of that person, and to liaise with them and keep them fully updated with every step of the investigation.
My dad knew straight away that something bad was wrong, and I told him that Phil had died. My dad was probably worse than my mum. He was absolutely distraught. He was in bits. Just kept saying, God, why? Just didn't. He couldn't deal with it. I think with losing 2 sons before that, he just couldn't believe that he'd lost another son. So, just really broke him.
Despite having just received the heartbreaking news about their son, Philip Croydon's parents' thoughts quickly turned to his widow.
Carol stopped and spoke to my dad and my mum for a little while, and then made her excuses, saying she had a headache and she wanted to go to bed, and would I help her to get in bed. My dad kissed Carol as she went upstairs to bed, and told her to try and get some rest.
The family grieved and tended to a distraught Carol.
I went and helped her get undressed and put some pyjamas on and get into her bed, while we all sat downstairs, discussing and kind of guessing what might have happened to Phil.
In the hotel, the police investigation was unearthing more details surrounding Philip Croydon's death.
The Home Office pathologist arrived at the scene, examined the body of Mr. Croydon, and it became apparent that he'd received numerous stab wounds to the back of the neck and also to the chest. The ties that had been tied to his wrists and the scarf that had been placed over his head, it was his opinion that these had been placed or tied on after death. They were so tight that there was no discoloration of the wrists or no reaction when they were untied. And in relation to the scarf that's been placed over his head, he suggested that that would have fallen off in an assault. So it was quite clear that this had happened after death. And it was our opinion that whoever had done this had wanted to make it look like a sexually orientated assault.
Now police were certain they had a murder case on their hands. And whilst Carol was grieving with the Croydon family, they checked a new potential lead. CCTV footage of the previous night from the hotel cameras was found and examined. It showed Philip Croydon entering the hotel alone at 5:09. What officers were hoping was that it would identify Philip Croydon's killer. The police were one day into investigating the death of Philip Croydon from the Nottinghamshire village of Edwinstowe. He'd been found in a local hotel room with multiple stab wounds and his hands and neck bound. Philip's wife Carol had reported him missing on the night of the killing. Police had already concluded this wasn't a sex game gone wrong, but murder, and they hoped the hotel's CCTV footage would help with their inquiries.
As two detectives viewed CCTV footage from the hotel.
Armed with the details of all the Croydon family vehicles, 20 minutes after Philip had checked in, police made a surprising discovery.
Mrs. Croydon's car was seen entering the hotel on the Friday evening, and a lady who got out of the car fitted the description of Mrs. Croydon. That was clearly very irregular to what she'd said to us about where she was the night before and the fact that her husband was out playing cards.
Then officers saw Carol leaving in different clothes 40 minutes later.
The two officers spoke to the senior investigating officer and immediately then went to Edwinstowe, saw Miss Croydon, and she was arrested on suspicion of murder.
The family liaison officer, Matt Spradbury, was there to see the reaction to this new turn of events.
It was a massive shock to the family that she'd been arrested on suspicion of his murder.
I couldn't believe it. I said, look, you've got to be wrong, this can't be right. You've made a mistake. I just couldn't believe that she'd done it.
All the police activity outside the Croydon house in Edwinstowe started to attract attention in the village.
So the village of Edwinstowe is a very nice, quaint, leafy village, very close to Sherwood Forest. It's a lovely place to live, and for journalists it was a massive interest, and for us we obviously covered it every single day.
Carol Croydon was taken to Wigston police station in Leicester to explain how she happened to be checking into the same hotel as the husband she had reported missing.
The police obviously looked into her story, and they looked at the CCTV from the hotel, and there was Carol Croydon at the hotel. Apparently she had no knowledge that her husband was there, and she was going to see him, and she was also filmed leaving the hotel. Police could then prove that she did know where he had been.
She was obviously aware that officers had got her going into the hotel on CCTV. She told police officers that she'd gone there to meet her husband to engage in a swingers session with another couple who we call Brian and Linda.
Whilst Carol was being interviewed in custody, the family wanted as many updates as possible and were waiting eagerly to find out whether there were going to be any charges against her. I had contact with Philip's brother Stephen in the main, and he was adamant that I made a personal visit to them to keep them updated no matter what time it was.
Carol Croydon said that she left the hotel room, she left Brian and Linda in the hotel room with her husband, and that she'd lost her nerve and gone.
This didn't sit right with me at all, because Phil just isn't like that. Never would have even entered his mind to do anything like that.
Phil was very quiet and very shy, and certainly that was totally out of character. So then that made me think, what has she done?
The police went on the hunt for Brian and Linda, the swingers from room 328.
Whilst Mrs. Croydon was being interviewed, officers were checking the CCTV footage of the hotel. There was no evidence whatsoever of anyone else going into the room where Mr. Croydon was found. So it soon became very apparent to officers on the investigation that Mrs. Croydon was telling us a lie.
Whilst the family tried to come to terms with events, and after the police had failed to find Brian and Linda on the hotel CCTV, they expanded their investigation to Carol's house in Edwinstowe.
Mrs. Croydon was in custody. There's a lot of actions that are going on behind the scene. We have a lot of detectives who are working on this case.
3 days after Philip's death, the police made a discovery.
Officers carried out a forensic search of her home address and found in a dustbin a carrier bag which contained blood marks, which subsequently, upon testing, turned out to be the blood of Mr. Croydon.
The police continued their search, uncovering plane tickets to Dublin for Carol and a male passenger flying 2 days after Philip's death. With this new evidence, they questioned Carol again.
She was asked about a number of contacts that were held in a mobile phone. There was a gentleman in the contacts that she described as being a friend and a shoulder to cry on. However, behind the scenes, officers were making inquiries into the various individuals concerned, and this particular individual, it soon became apparent from what officers found that he was more than just a casual friend, if you like, and possibly somebody that she may have been having some sort of relationship with.
It wasn't long before Carol changed her story.
When she was further interviewed, she introduced this person to us as somebody that she was having a relationship with. Mrs. Croydon told police officers that her boyfriend had come to the hotel, come into the room, and told her to leave, later meeting up with him in the evening. He then told her that she wouldn't be seeing her husband again.
Police acted fast, and Carol's lover was arrested.
Following the interview, she then actually changed her story and actually said to police officers that her boyfriend burst into the hotel room and stabbed her husband Philip several times, and she actually witnessed him do that. So we've got a change, if you like, of the two interviews, from actually letting him in and asking him to leave to, secondly, from actually watching him do it. She was asked, how did her boyfriend get into the room? How did he burst into the room? She was unable to answer that.
Could it be that Carol is so enmeshed with her lover? Is she wanting to protect him? Is she covering for him? And would that explain why actually the stories so far really haven't been very believable at all?
While Carol's lover was in custody, the police were checking out his movements at the time of the murder.
We were able to actually eliminate a boyfriend through his mobile phone, which actually put him in a different part of the country, and he couldn't possibly have been anywhere near the incident scene.
The police looked into his story very carefully to discount him from the murder, and they proved that it would have been impossible for the lover to get to the hotel in time and leave. They retraced his route very carefully, they timed it, and they made it sure that they could prove that he was not involved.
Philip's family continued to be kept informed of events by police.
It was like as if Phil had died all over again, because the first story obviously wasn't true. So then she was telling us this. So then it was like putting us through that torture of losing Phil all over again, but in a different way.
Once we discovered that the boyfriend could not possibly have been involved with the murder, he was released from custody. We then presented the evidence that we'd got so far to the CPS, who proposed that we charge Mrs. Croydon with murder.
After 13 separate interviews, and 5 days since Philip Croydon's body was discovered in room 328, his wife Carol was charged with murder.
There was sort of a sense of relief there that, you know, we knew what had happened.
News of the murder charge against Carol quickly spread through the community.
When the villagers found out, they were shocked, because it's such a quiet, peaceful village. Everybody were talking about it at that time, because it was so unusual.
Police started to build a picture of the days leading up to Philip Croydon's death. But to establish murder, they would have to prove Carol had a motive.
We made inquiries at Carol Croydon's place of work, and CCTV showed that she left at 2 minutes to 5. She'd actually signed out at 20 past 5. We thought that showed some sort of planning on her behalf to buy herself some 20 minutes of time.
With Carol in custody, the police continued with their investigation.
We made inquiries at Carol Croydon's place of work, and it became apparent that there was a knife missing, some sort of cheese knife, but we were never able to fully establish the time it went missing.
On the morning of the 25th of April 2003, police believed Carol left home for work with a number of neckties and a change of clothes in her possession.
Had Carol set out that day with murder on her mind? The case was building, but who knew what was around the corner? In Nottinghamshire, police were dealing with a murder investigation that was continually changing direction, but they were determined to find the truth.
5 days after Philip Croydon had been found stabbed in a hotel room near the village of Edwinstowe, his wife Carol had been charged with his murder. She'd already changed her story on 3 occasions, wasting police time and resources, but there was more to come. Whilst Carol was on remand awaiting trial, yet another version of events emerged. She now said Philip had asked her to tie him up.
As a child, she'd been sexually abused by various people. She said that she'd had flashbacks to her childhood, which caused her to inflict the stab wounds to her husband, which subsequently killed Mr. Croydon.
At this stage, it's quite clear that Carol has committed the killing. So really, the only other option for her is to try and get a reduced sentence by saying that it was diminished responsibility.
Carol blamed flashbacks to her childhood, and that had sent her into a blind rage, and she couldn't remember doing anything, but just found herself standing over Phil's body, and Phil was dead.
I've worked with a lot of patients who have flashback phenomenon, and they are very strong, vivid memories. What tends to happen though is that people go back to how they felt whilst that memory was formed. So what I would expect was for Carol to have felt small, helpless, immobilised with fear.
With Carol now claiming she hadn't committed murder, it was the police's job to prove it was premeditated. So they looked into Carol and Philip's life together in the search for a motive.
Carol's past was always kind of kept a bit of a, not a secret, but she never wanted to discuss it. And if you asked her questions about her past, which you could tell made her feel uncomfortable, she would move on to another subject.
Philip Croydon and Carol got married on the 17th of June 2000 at St Peter's Church in the Derby suburb of Chellaston.
Her first impressions were good. I mean, Phil's obviously clearly madly in love with her, even though he'd not known her for very long. Carol was seemed very friendly, but she was a little bit secretive about her past and her family. We knew she'd been adopted, she told us that much, but that was about all she did tell us.
Philip's father told me during my interview with him that he didn't know very much about Carol's background or much about her, and he potentially wasn't too trusting with her.
Phil kind of changed a little bit. I got the feeling that she was feeding him, this is what you should do, this is what you should say.
Police discovered that Philip went out of his way to try and give Carol everything she desired.
She was very materialistic. Everything with Carol was all about money, and how people might perceive her, down to the car that she had, the pedigree cats that she had. Everything was all about how it looked to other people.
This was also noted by Family Liaison Officer Matt Spradbury.
They both had, at the time, brand new Toyota sports vehicles. The home address was beautifully furnished and a very nice big house. It's quite clear that Carol liked to have nice clothes as well from some of the search work we did, and liked to have nice things in her life.
The investigation continued, and officers uncovered that Carol's lavish lifestyle with Philip was in stark contrast to her upbringing.
There's no doubt that Carol had not come from ideal circumstances. That leads me to think that maybe she'd inherited some sort of predisposition towards antisocial behaviour. Or at the very least, maybe her early experiences in those first 2 years of when she was still with her mother and her father were so damaging that it affected her ability to form close, meaningful attachments to people in her life, and particularly men in her life.
Philip's family may have been unaware of Carol's background, but they were now under no illusions that she had killed Philip.
The police had just drip-fed us the information as time had gone on, and each time she'd changed the story. I think it wasn't a shock what she'd done, because we knew a different person to the person that she was portraying.
When the pathology report came back, it didn't seem to point to a vulnerable woman who was protecting herself as she was claiming.
Carol entered room 328, where her husband was waiting. She performed a sex act on her husband, and then she got a 4-inch cheese knife out of her bag and began to stab him.
On examination of Mr. Croydon found that he'd been stabbed 22 occasions, 2 to the chest, 20 to the neck area.
Philip Croydon bled to death. He had superficial cuts to his left hand that implied that he'd tried to grasp the blade as it was plunged into him, and that he'd possibly been trying to fight back, save his life.
The attack was very frenzied, but then it had to be in order to get Philip dead quickly so that he couldn't overpower her, maybe use the knife against her in self-defence. So she had to be committed to a very, very brutal and sudden attack, and she was. She severed his spinal cord with one blow, so she wasn't taking any chances.
This horrific attack on Philip had been carried out with a cheese knife that fitted the description of one that had gone missing from Carol's workplace a few weeks before.
Here we've got a direct link between Carol and the murder weapon. Now, I can imagine why somebody planning a night of romps with their husband might pack neckties and scarves, but pack a cheese knife? That's something that's a bit more difficult to explain.
With Carol's stories not adding up, Ascertaining what was fact and what was fiction in Carol Croydon's life wasn't proving to be simple for police. Carol Croydon was accused of murdering her husband Philip and leaving him tied up in a Nottinghamshire hotel room, trying to make it look like a bondage session gone wrong. Having already changed her story numerous times, Carol was now claiming diminished responsibility due to a life of abuse. Police were still busy trying to prove a motive, and thus murder.
There just seemed to be no motive whatsoever for killing her husband, except that she stood to inherit the £300,000 family home in Edwinstowe and an insurance policy.
Police carried on with their investigations and went through the hotel bookings on the night of the killing.
A neighbouring couple who were in the next room to Mr. Croydon reported hearing noises at the relevant time of the incident and a voice saying, "Don't, don't."
Officers continued trying to prove that Carol's motive was financial. Looking into her and Philip's relationship was key to their case.
He met Carol at work. Carol went there as an accountant, and after a short period of time they developed problems with the company. Carol was fired from her position. Phil was that much in love with her. He felt that he had to give his notice in as well, so they both went at the same time.
Detectives soon discovered a side to Carol that she'd kept hidden from everyone, including her besotted husband.
She'd made a lot of false statements, if you like. She'd got a false driving licence in terms of her date of birth. Her birth certificate had been falsified, again with the date of birth. Her passport, even a national insurance number. She'd made herself appear 4 years younger than what she actually was. She was also, it was found that she'd applied for an accountancy course and falsified her qualifications. That enabled her to get a role later on in life as an accountant. Clearly, there's a lot of things going on in the background here that just didn't add up with Mrs. Croydon.
What police were discovering was that Carol Croydon's whole life was nothing more than a tangled web of lies. What they needed to do was prove that her claim of diminished responsibility was just another one.
Carol said that she'd been abused, sexually abused, physically abused throughout her life and by various different men. It might provide some sort of reason for why she's so willing to really take advantage of any of the men in her life, and why she was angry towards her partner to the extent that actually divorcing him wasn't enough. She wanted to kill him.
After an investigation lasting more than 6 months, the police believed they had enough evidence to convict Carol of murder. But it would all be meaningless if her defence could prove diminished responsibility. On January the 28th, 2004, the case against Carol Croydon went to Nottingham Crown Court.
She was brought into court, sat in the dock, very calmly. As all the charges were read out to the jury. There was one charge, obviously, was murder. I just remember her being very, very calm and cool in the circumstances. She was facing a murder charge.
The prosecution presented their case, witnesses came and gave their evidence. The defence went down the line of provocation. Mrs. Croydon was suggesting that her childhood she'd suffered sexual abuse by a number of people and that she'd suffered provocation into murdering her husband.
The whole of Philip's family were in court from the first day.
Carol didn't show any emotion. When she stood there, there was just a look of fear, but not any emotion showing at all. It was just like shock that she'd been caught.
The extent of Carol's colossal amount of lying was laid out in every detail for the jury.
There's only one witness to the crime, obviously, which was Carol Croydon, and she didn't give evidence about that, so the jury were reliant on the explanations that she gave to the police at the time, and there were varying explanations as to what happened and what her involvement was that changed. And that was probably one of the most interesting parts of the case, about how she had told lie after lie to the point where she couldn't remember what happened.
To be a good liar, you have to construct a very plausible lie, and then you have to stick to it really quite rigidly. And this is where she comes unstuck, because Carol has to have points for flair and imagination, but when it comes to consistency and believability, she really does fall down. She's too much of a fantasist.
The jury then heard Carol's final version of events.
Mrs. Croydon had admitted that she'd stabbed her husband many, many times, but she'd had a blackout, and that when she came to, she was just standing over his body and couldn't actually recall the actual incident itself. This was viewed by a psychiatrist in court as being very unusual in the circumstances. He said it was possible, but he doubted it. She's fitted each account to try and deceive, and hopefully she was hoping to get away with convincing people, but obviously when she's presented with the truth, she has to change her story.
The prosecution introduced the evidence from the crime scene, starting with the pathology report.
The pathologist in court found the neckties around his wrists had not been soaked in blood, which implied that it had been tied around his wrists after he'd been attacked.
What the chambermaid saw would have appeared to a layperson as a sexual misadventure, a sexually motivated offence. But actually, it doesn't take too close an inspection to work out that it's not all as it seems. And when a crime scene has been cleverly constructed to look like something it isn't, there's a reason for that. Somebody wants to distance themselves. So if somebody wants to distance themselves from a murder, the chances are that they're actually very, very close. And you can't be more close to this murder than a husband and a wife.
Sitting in court, Carol's web of lies were harrowing for Philip's loved ones.
We all went every day for nearly 3 weeks. Some days it was difficult. You know, you didn't want to get in the car, you didn't want to go and listen to the information that you knew you were going to have to sit through again, and kind of see my mum and dad's faces and how everybody felt, and it was very upsetting and very draining, and obviously something that took the family years and years to get over, and I really don't think my dad ever got over it.
Towards the end of the trial, the prosecution called in a psychologist to talk about Carol's alleged state of mind at the time of the killing.
Carol says that she was very, very depressed. She was depressed as a result of problems in her marriage, and she was depressed as a result of trauma in her history. But the classic symptoms of depression are lack of libido, lack of motivation, lack of concentration and ability to plan ahead, general purpose apathy. Now that's actually the antithesis of what we're seeing with Carol, because this is somebody who was able to plan and execute a murder and also maintain several affairs.
What the jury was told by the expert witness was to be key in the case against Carol Croydon.
He's concluded that Mrs. Croydon couldn't have been suffering from any mental disability or depression at the time of the killing.
With that, Carol Croydon's defence of diminished responsibility collapsed. It was the moment Philip's family had been waiting for.
At this point during the trial, they were now beginning to think, she's responsible for this, and they just wanted justice to be done.
After almost a 3-week trial, a jury of 7 women and 5 men retired to consider Carol Croydon's various accounts of the events on the evening of the 25th of April 2003. After just 3 hours, they'd reached a verdict.
On February the 12th, 2004, Carol Croydon was convicted of the murder of her husband at Nottingham Crown Court. She broke down uncontrollably in the dock when the jury came back with the verdict. She clutched a tissue to her head.
I think when the judge found her guilty, I'm sure I screamed. It was panic. I was thankful that she'd been found guilty, but at the same time, you know, still kind of just thinking about Phil and what, you know, we were never going to see him again.
On convicting Mrs. Croydon, the judge said in his summing up that he was quite satisfied that she'd committed a sex act on him, got him at his weakest point, and it was at that point that she murdered him.
The judge sentenced Carol to life imprisonment, set a minimum term of 16 years. He told her that she was a cold-hearted, cold-blooded killer who tried to blame others for being responsible for her husband's murder.
This Carol Croydon case wasn't a sudden loss of self-control during an argument. It was a pre-planned and well-thought-out murder.
All along, Carol's allegations of abuse had just been more lies. Philip's family struggled to see the 16-year sentence as justice.
The sentence can never be long enough for anyone to do something like that, to take another life deliberately and never show any remorse, which she hasn't. She's never ever admitted to it, never shown any remorse, never apologised. And to do something like that, my opinion is people who are 100% guilty, there's no doubt whatsoever, they should stay in prison the rest of their life.
When she was found guilty, she sat in the dock and she sobbed, presumably for the fact that she wouldn't be able to live the great life that she'd led in the past, not for the fact of she'd taken our brother away from us, and she killed him in such a horrible way that would be emblazoned on all our minds forever.
After the verdict, Philip's dad, Ted Croydon, read a statement in which he said, "I curse this woman every day I wake. I call on God that she cannot sleep, that she knows no peace of mind, that her food is harsh in her mouth and without taste, that her thirst cannot be quenched, that she sees no sun or the beauty of nature, that she hears no bird song." He added, "That woman is the devil incarnate, nothing but an evil witch."
I absolutely hate her as much as I did the day that she did it. I hate her just as much, not just for what she did to Phil, but what she's put my family through. It's unforgivable. My father was never the same. It ruined his life, it changed him completely. He was a broken man. He died a broken man. I'll never ever forgive her for that.
Because Carol Croydon refused to take the stand, no one will ever know for certain what happened in room 328 on the 25th of April 2003. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of the whole case is that Carol's lover left his wife and at time of sentencing still wanted a future with her, despite the fact that she named him as the killer, hoping to evade justice.